Hello guys, this is LukeJ speaking. Welcome to book reviews episode 9, and today we read you chapter 8 of the book called Street Gang. So let's read it now and see what we got, shall we? See what we got. Okay. Chapter 8. There are risk takers and risk takers. Okay. Some are calculated, others impulsive. Some are reasoned, others reckless. Lloyd Marthasset is an example of the former, which is good enough. This is late spring 1967. After doing considerable research, Marthasset was ready to bet that television could teach children some more incentive than Mr. Clean gets rid of dirt and grime and grease in just a minute. Mr. Clean will clean your whole house and everything. That is it. And it. What do you call it? But anyway. The question was, will everyone else lay money on that bet? The odds was only 50-50 chance that the coronate the foundation that paid a salary would participate, even though the Philadelphia would pronounce it, had bankrolled the feasibility study, and it may had taken on Joe Canscuni and on it as a consultant to develop the project. Television would not vibe well with the coronate, Marthasset recalled. It was having perception of being a black hole in terms of using up money. And there was doubts that what you produce would you have a value. That was abnormal. So my job became how to convince my colleagues to take a chance and do something like this. When we had done anything in television, zero. I don't know what to do about it. But anyway, Monster had to follow the same professors, we pronounce it, and producing a giant for the preschool series, as he did for any other project Connery, okay? They was vice president, provided certain call, okay? But not a golden ticket. The preschool series was just another idea up for consideration. And Marthasset would have to defend it, promote it, and immediately sell it to his boss. Alan Pfeiffer, Marthasset believed, which is cool enough, that if Cadre could show up good faith and graduate the first $1 million to it for the effort, it would likely be the key to releasing funds from other interested entities. Fundraising at this stage became Marthasset's highest priority and foremost responsibility. We didn't know whether we would have money to produce a series. We didn't know if we did produce it, how we would go get broadcast, Marthasset said. But the self-described true believer made a plan. Rather than cast a wide net, he would cherry pick, targeting how only major corporate and parliament topic we pronounce it, entitles and the federal government. Clooney encouraged Marthasset to aim high. We have decided from the first, and then we wouldn't go around begging for pennies. She said either we could go get the Sorry. Anyway, either we could get full funding to do the show right, or we would drop it. If it was to, next page, be a bold innovator, basically pronounce it, she reasoned, that should amuse and off in an air of convenience. After all, there were intended to enter the arena in big budget television, where the size and scope of the audience determines success or failure. Sad, no. Cooney said, we had to compete with a loud voice, mad music, wow, and strong wine with kids. The kids were getting on commercial shows. And so with no funding commitments, hard or soft, Hunt was on with Washington with the first stop. Okay, can't discuss that. What transcript of the United States Office of Education (USOE) on the final day of June of 1967 without using that vivid, it's slightly impolite non-balls. Wow. USOE's Commissioner Howell Ho II had them. A civil servant known for childhood as Doc Howe, who was wrongful of conic, where you pronounce it. Sorry. Dragons that day. He had called me only weeks after receiving a bulky parcel from his old friend Lloyd Marceret, and that contained Cooney's festivity study, which hauled up the board, okay? How you can pronounce it, but okay. He was so encouraged by its argument and aims, but that he planned phoned Marceret right away to ask that he came to Washington with that Cooney dame. Wow. Cooney recalled that Howe said that to Marceret. Said we don't have the money to do this. I don't think had come on down, and we'll sit around the table with the department people, the research people, and the preschool education people. Exactly. Doc Hall was a man of action, conservation, and concern for his fellow man. Treads seemingly past Gina Coley, born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1918. He was a son of the Reverend Arthur Howe, a Dartmouth College professor who became president of Hartford Institute of Virginia. Wow. Now known as Harvard University, which is cool enough. Reference Hall's father-in-law, Samuel Copman, what you pronounce it, Armstrong, had been a Union general who commanded black troops in the Civil War. Wow. He later found Hampton as a trade school for the free slaves. Yeah, that's sad, no. Doc spent a part of this upbringing as a young white man on that traditionally black campus. The rest of the years, Dartmouth's campus in Hanover, New Hampshire. A Northern New Englander by transplantation, he hiked in New Hampshire mountains, fished for trout, and skate on local ponds. Just a slide taller from 6 feet with a Silent, shiny, bright build and skinny legs. We pronounce it, okay. And he never should still for too long in one place, okay. Burn one ice ring for the left-handed swinger shaped with ferocity at Yale. He left New Hampshire in 1940 with a history degree and briefly fought at the private school. During and after World War II, he skippered a mine sweeper in the Pacific. Back in the States, Howell earned a master's degree in history from Columbia University. Upon graduation, he joined the factory of then back boys only it was boarding school, Phillips Academy in Ulster, Massachusetts, better known as Alvador. Wow. Howell taught history and coach hockey. Van later completed postgraduate work at Harvard and the University of Cincinnati. Education administration jobs back on thereafter. And Howell's served as principal at schools in Cincinnati and Northern Massachusetts. Wow. But before being named school superintendent in Surfsdale, New York, a wealthy accolade in Westchester County. It was there that country President John Gardner, whose children attended Scarsdale schools, came to know the superintendent and his wife for this Lamhall, known as Sibley, but it was Morissette who recommended Howe for the directorship of Learning Institute of South North Carolina and emerged Men's Bournes Academy for promoting high school students in that state. Hall's next move combined him onto the national stage in Washington. Gardner was a key figure for President Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs that wave on the social change intended to reduce poverty and change educational opportunities, promote equalities equally, we pronounce it, safeguard the environment and rebuild cities. On January 27, 1965, John swore in Gardner in the Secretary of Health, Education and Welfare. In 1966, Gardner committed LBJ, that Howe was ready to fill the role of USOE administrator. Even though he has no experience in the political appointee, we can pronounce it. Such what was the respect between the president and his EHW secretary that LBJ gave his blessing. What the president didn't know as a smart out was how seriously my father viewed Brown v. Board Education. Oh my God, please help me. Said Howe's daughter, Kathy Short. After all, my father was about black people and all in his young life at Hampton. Wow. Indeed, during Howe's term of service, he became Johnson's steely champion of... Oh man, my eyes are getting itchy. Hang on. Sorry about that, but anyway. Where was I? Oh yes, champion of school discretion. And the target for the wealth of sovereign legislators, who are traditionally referred to him as the Administrator of Education, the U.S. Administrator of Integration. Under for violations of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, how withheld billions in aid to local school districts where minimum integration goals had not been achieved. In response, a House resolution, we pronounce it HR 382, dated March 15th, 1967, resolved with that House should resign or be replaced. Hal Barry Blake. Wow. On June 30th of 1967, Hal was married, represents the Children's Bureau, the Bureau of Research, and the Bureau of Elementary and Secondary Education to discuss the merits of the preschool television program commercial. Joel Sugarman, the then associate director of Head Start, wasn't able to attend, but sent a favorable note about the pursuit of the Howe. The visit to Washington was the first major presentation before. Turn the page. Okay. Professional funded by a team of Mosrett, Cooney, and Carney staff member Barbara Finberg, who was on hand to elaborate on the proposal and take questions. Okay, cool enough. They encouraged Frost from the moment they crossed the choice household. I have to say that there was an attitude around the table that was highly negative, and that you could understand why. Margaret said years later, wow, all of these people have their own programs, their money, and was going to do the things they were interested in. Here's what were initially a couple of outsiders coming in with an expense idea. Furthermore, it was television, and they weren't doing anything in television. Yeah, so much interesting. It was to say that the least discouraging to encounter a room full of men with their arms folded. Now it's more interesting. The body language favored by the what do you pronounce it? Not the percent, but Morissette, Cooney, and the Furberg, we pronounce it, okay? Calmly and confidently carried on with an occasional glance towards the administrator. We were the true believers, Margaret said. We talked about the research background in the need. When it came time for questions, the attendees were sour, and sullied. Wow. Until I'll step up. I want to know where each man stands on this proposal. He demanded never in his eyes. He commanded the room, and the refrain was consoling. We didn't have the money for this. Hal was silent and slowly scanned the table. Okay, screw that. Yeah, I'm done. Well then, the ayes have it, he said. The ayes have it. We'll do it, he said. The end. He paid no heed to the creditors' stares, the face, the naysayers, and as administrator, how I ranked them, and they knew it. Wow. How leaned slightly forward, hands on hips, his slightly turned. I have got my squirrel away. I knew each one of you has too. He said, we're going to try this preschool television idea as a research project. Wow. Using department, my eventual, research funds, find the money. Exactly. He then, turned to his, assistant, former television executive, Louis Hausman. You're going to do from apartment, to apartment, getting them to cough up money. Wow. Hausman, like wow, was new to Washington, drawn to public service after retirement from the career at CBS and NBC. He immediately viewed the, Carney report was a skepticism and borrowed on, cynicism. I didn't have too much, confidence in it. I have no knowledge of where you, could take a program like this and teach kids anything. He acknowledged no one knew it. Excuse me. This is what not to say Houseman was supposed to do the use of the television as a teaching tool. He was eventually eager to draw upon the resources of the Office of Education. The rest is proportional. Yeah, the rest test is proportional. We pronounce it. Excuse me. Without demonstrate a, seamlessly square, social distance, scientist, what you call it. And Cooney is former producer of public affairs for a channel stunned by the masses. Could pull off a show that any child would ever watch. He's seen this Daniel educational television in general, which is called in which many, excuse me, I misspoke. At the time, viewed as mind-numbing. Okay, numbing, misspoke, but anyway. Arch and amateurish, we call it, but I misspoke. But again, excuse me. After the room, as view cleared, Asman told the whole point back blank. Okay, that the Carney's ideas had proposed was wrong-headed. He eventually said that the people from educational TV know that only one color, gray, and only one speed, deadly. Wow. He criticized the proposed budget for the show, then at $1 million. Excuse me, I misspoke. But anyway, as laughably inadequate. Wait, pronounce it. Sorry. Anyway, given the scoop of what's to be being considered, I think they have their programs priced at $12,000 an hour. I said this is ridiculous, Hoffman said, and that the Walt Disney Company budgeting it 10 times that much at a similar hour of television. Hoffman admitted it would take $1 million just to research the show. Another $2 and $3 million to produce it, and at least $1 million to promote and memorize the show. Wow. He threw in another $1 million for the unexpected. Hoffman told Hall, "I see a budget of around $6 million. This is a terrible figure," Hall said, blanching. "Yes," Hoffman replied, tapping down his hand and was weighed when people mean to say, "Hold on, wait a minute." Yep. "All we have is to guarantee 50% of the $6 million dollars." Wow, he continued. Reason that the government committed a $3 million could be the stretch over the 2 fiscal years. The project would be the $1.5 million in its development year, with another $1.5 million for its first year on the air. We thrown that away and on a lot of other things. Let's once for all see if the television program can be built to gain the rest attention of a significant number of youngsters. Wow. And after their attention is engaged, can they learn anything? Let's get all of the money they get recently to be asked for. Hal nodded. They're thinking about the lonely graveyard on the outskirts of the District of Columbia, DC for short, where they may be a disguised project toilet until indefinitely. Wow, strange enough for Hal. Osmond walked around a bit, digging into his pants pockets. His years in Manhattan had provided plenty of training in projecting realistic production budgets and launch schedules and plenty of exposures to top drawer producers. What have we learned? That network quality television delivers money and time, like few creature editors can. Studio time shows alone, it's like having a 5-minute parking meter that gets fit $100 bills. Wow. Next page. Oh, we got. Okay, we have until 116. But anyway, unless you are willing to do it at least $3 billion, okay? I really don't want any thing to do with it. Osmond told his boss. Otherwise, turn it over to the research department. Hal nodded again and leaned back in his chair. He have given it to all this and this awesome thoughts. Okay, this is strange. A few days later, Osmond launched a torpedo. Okay, this is strange enough again. In the memo to Hall meant the sparse involvement in such a project by ETV. Wow, this is cool. He wrote, I'm seriously concerned about how Carney proposed to get board broad appeal, educationally acceptable program to compete successfully with other settings on television. He suggested an end run asking how to encourage Carney to order pilots from the 4 of 5 while film television production studios in Los Angeles. Wow. The suppliers of shows for commercials to television, each of these producers would be given a budget of, say, $100,000. And general guidelines with what should or should not be in the program. They would be told to produce a pilot or furnish a script outline for 12 initial hours of programming. That's how many. That's mass appeal entertainment is produced. Wow, and there is no reason for a similar method should be employed in this project. Lou wrote in the memo that about this pilot plan that has absolutely put me in arrest. Wow, Cooney said. But instead of panicking, Lloyd just remarked, I just think I have an idea about how to handle this. Yeah, I agree. But anyway, colleagues revile Howard and Yale, Bard and Yale, can each claims a measure of paternity for Sesame Street. During the show's 3-year generation period from 1966 to 1969, researchers finally readers and graduates both Ivy Institute touch nearly every phase of its development. Chief among the contributors with Yale's backgrounds with Martin said, who received his doctorate there in experimental biology. In 1967, he frustrated more than the field of biologists with outfit. He began to reach out to friends, colleagues, and competitors to in fill land property with the government and education. Um, Many of whom entailed from the Harvard Yale nexus, we pronounce it, would be when their enlarges must laid factual foundation heat for Sesame Street. In the early stages of fundraising, Mosseret delivered up a copy of the series proposal for F. Champ Ward, the Ford Foundation's Director of Education Projects. Ward had earned his doctorate in philosophy at Yale in 1947 and went on to become an undergraduate dean at the University of Chicago before joining Ford in New York. Like Morris said, Ward was a high-level gatekeeper for grant applications. He was expected to identify and back projects worthy of Ford's time and money. Wow. Approaching Ford's makes sense. Gave the foundation history of supporting education television. The foundation of poetry began in 1952. Wow. The year the FCC set aside 242 channels. Wow. Across the nation for non-commercial use. And initially to prompt communities to sponsor educational stations. Ford issued matching grants for construction that provide $1 for every $2 raised locally. Additionally, Ford was awarded $1.35 million to the newly incorporated Educational Television Radio Center, a program exchange service based on Ann Arbor, Michigan, that distributed locally produced education programs to far distant stations. By 1963, the Ann Arbor group had moved to New York and morphed into National Educational Television, NET for short. A confederation of educational stations that ship programs back and forth via USA Network. Mail. Excuse me, I misspoke. NET is hardly the fourth network and has been claimed its stations were not interconnected by large long-distance telephone lines. The transmission method that predated satellites. Through NET have some worthy programs. The era schedule demonstrated by local programs managers. The early years of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which began in 1967, which were bicycleized from station to station, airing in different days and different time slots. In brief, NET went to PBS and was to PBS, went to Pony Express, was to FedEx. It's accomplished a similar goal, but without the timeless prediction or reality, we pronounce it. For the first foray into the commercial television program came in 1953 with Indominus, bus, we pronounce it, okay. A Sunday afternoon televised on CBS that brought fear, dance, and seminal music in an American home, along with dramatized segments on history and art. Its host and narrator was Alistair Cook, who is the future host of Masterpiece Fear, a U.S.-based correspondent for the BBC who would gain wider fame of these stories as host of PBS's Masterpiece Fear. And it was the basics for the character of Sesame Street's Masterpiece Fear, that delicious parody featuring a scenery chewing out the cookie, that is. But anyway. And speaking of which, I did one video that I did called LukeJ62895's 2007. It was basically a video that I've done, which is awesome. And I want to do this again with an LJP Sphere some other time, but that's just a home of classic drama. But right now, we're going to read this book. But anyway. By the mid-1960s, non-commercial television was deeply in the need of a makeover, and the brief brand educational television, a two-tweed and chalk-dusted for its own good, had slim appeal, but there was playable and unattainable desire that for commercial and public affairs programming, we pronounce it, among viewers who wanted more than television. Then shoot 'em ups and Dodge City, caper and cop shows shot on the mean streets in the studio lot. Wow. Fish out of water sitcoms and song stylings in the late sisters on the Warren's Walk Show. A more demand audience crave stage plays adapted from the small screen. The music of Beethoven and Broderick, which is so boring. The goes and debate on the issues on that day. Yeah, it was so lame. But anyway, the non-violent children's programming, and perhaps without knowing it, Monty's platform, which is awesome, by the way. In response to the hunger came in the vision of let me turn the page. Public television, a new label for the Ford Foundation promoted and hoped would stick to its some border, okay? More publish something that let me just turn the page and see what happens. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Never mind. Got it. More publish, okay? Something more. We only got a few more pages left before we wrap things up. But anyway, we got this. Anyway, demonic and repulsive. Something protected and unsalted. Solid. Something to which Thomas Jefferson and the Communist Parliament, the communists would pledge allegiance. So that's one. But anyway, pledge being the opposite word. Wow. In 1966, President Johnson used the bully Parliament of the State of the Union address to ask for the increased support from the non-commercial television. With Johnson's blessing, a Carney-sponsored commission took up the task of investigating what would take the validate the citizens for the award a $10 million stimulus, which is going to be great for the COVID-19, which is called stimulus, grant at the end of the year. Wow. To develop programming that would have been shared by educational stations, connected by a long-line telephone cable, a 2-year demonstration of the power of interconnection. You hear a dog bark in the background, but that's just me. But anyway. The grant came the Public Broadcast Laboratory, PBL for short. A costly entertainment experiment to test that would happen if the rich pool of the television talent was set free to the creep ball, MLS, and unconditional programs. Wow. The likes of which would never appear on commercial television. PBL's champion was Fred W. Friendly, who is responsible for my childhood's Robert McNeil and Jim Lair at the time. For my childhood at the time. Back then, he was, at the time, I was watching these guys, and when I was 5, they were amazing. Continue on. A broadcasting engineer and Gayer, who was getting started in pop radio producing Here It Now with Edward R. Murrow, who a news magazine of the year, his television successor, See It Now. It set the standard for aggressive promoting and offensive opening promotion. Documentary television. It was on See It Now on the evening of March 9, 1954. That Murrow and his unseen editor Friendly, wow, shut up to propagation as no television news and his unseen editor, newsman, excuse me, as there to be before. The footage aired on that night, accomplished by Morrow's commentary, exposed Wisconsin Senator Joseph R. McCarthy. What he was scamming, power mad, damage, way pronounce it, who's trampled and twisted the conservative colony, way pronounce it. Granted the rights of incarnate citizens. That night, See It Now through a blockade, the Mad March of McCarthyism. Wow. Friendly Weisenheimer in New York was one described as a big, component man who was full of ideas and opinions around Olympian thunderbolts. From the ranks of producers, he rose to the presidency of CBS News in 1964. Excuse me, I misspoke. But anyway. Unleashing reporters like barking hounds to attach their jaws to the paint legs of the powerful. In doing so, he established the networks, publishing the unfed, unblinking news, gathering but friendly, with fabulous moments of roles at the network, resigned for this post in 1966. After CBS refused to present its daytime lineup, the sitcoms, reruns, game shows, which is David's favorite and everybody else, so is mine if you're watching this, David, and Remix and everybody, Billy, and soap operas to make a way for the long-awaited Senate for Foreign Relations Committee's hearings on the Vietnam War, which can be known as the Fulbright hearings. Friendly would no longer wish to be associated with the network that would be chosen at the time warned I Love Lucy episode over coverage and historic contemporary. Wow, this is sad. Friendly found a soft place to land in the Ford Foundation, where he played a critical advisory role in the passage of the Public Broadcasting Act of 1967. This is an exciting thing, which led to be forming the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS. This is big, folks. This is going to be big. TV is bigger than the AIM story that reports. He said in 1966, it's the greatest teaching the tool that since the printing press. It will demonstrate nothing less than what people we are. If TV exists now, it's only for the sake of the buck. Somebody going to have to change that. If Join Ford Friendly had a formidable new boss in McGeorge McBunny. A thinking man's who had been Forgan policy advisor to Presidents Kennedy and Johnson, Well, this is cool enough. One described by Harvard historian Harvard Disclosure Jr. A man of noble brilliance, encouraged me and encouraged you to pronounce it, okay? And parts will propose. Bunley, who was also said, don't want to say the D word in the video, by like David Harborsam, by the best and the brightest for his role in plunging the nation into the climate Vietnam in a restaurant loss of 55,000 American lives. Sad, no. After graduating Pi Survey Cuba for Yale for the mathematics degree. Excuse me. Bunny was appointed to Harvard's Society of Fellows, a program reserved for only the most promising scholars. In 1953, at the age of 34, he became Harvard's Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Science. Lloyd Marvert said understood that any hope of assistance from Ford ultimately was required validation of support from Bundy and his television advisor. Finally, validation matters was the news that Ford was testifying, way you pronounce it, support for the children's television project with his own, a program that teach read to the underprivileged. Wow. Like always, civil rebels in the Harvards and Yales, so too did the Grant gentlemen from the Ford Foundation and the Quality Corporation, complete from domination in regard from the 1960s. On paper, there was no comparison. Ford had been established in the Family Foundation in 1946. Was its status of $164,000. Wow. By 1942, its coffers had risen astonishingly, we pronounce it, to $30.7 million. Wow. Within a year, the assistance of shot up by nearly a factor of 7 when an indocile Bright Ford, the only son of Detroit Henry Ford, died at the age of 49, and named the foundation as chief beneficiary of the century. When Henry Ford died in 1947, the foundation expanded to the point that its essence achieved the combined balance of all of other foundations with the FAM 48 states. Well, back nowadays it's 50 states, so there you go. Currently was a Muslim installation in the 1960s. Before was the world's wealthiest, carrying on the compassion's missions. The foundation Rome, turn the page, okay. Its realms of their own choosing, okay, crossing paths and accosting with respectful nods, which is good enough. It was not always a crystal that Sesame Street would end up at public television. At least in his eyes on Lloyd Marset, he was open to the idea that it could air on a commercial venture, with advertisers bracketing, but not interrupting the program. This is very interesting. But there were precedents for such an arrangement in corporate underwriting and network specials and event coverage. Margaret called up on top of television executives to measure their interest and commend funding on airtime for the bulk of the show. But after a month of consideration, Neither Colin Goodman, president of NBC, nor John A. Jack Sherner, Goodman's chairman of CBS, offered much beyond their best wishes for success. Two television ownership groups, Time Life Broadcasting and George Group W. Westinghouse, politely pass on the proposal. This is sad. So let the records show that 2 years before Sesame Street would debut, NBC and CBS, with networks of Somov and Platley, rejected the project that would eventually shape children's television and make Big Bird a record recognition as Mickey Mouse. Given the review generated by Sesame Street licensing merchandising improved the decades by the global reach of the franchise. It was been on for 50 years. It's been aired for both PBS back in the day for the second run nowadays, and HBO for the first one nowadays. And nowadays it's been aired on HBO Max, which is coming up the 51st season. But that's just me. But anyway. And the global reach of the, turned down Sesame Street with $1 billion bundler. Wow. Mrs. Saab. What is more, the network missed a chance to offer per sector of commercial television itself, one regarded as a great thief of time. All the applause and gratitude for parents, all the awards and garnishing of all the praise of the critics could have been theirs. Stealing, but whatever. It was an opportunity that Newman Manuel himself might have described as vastly wasted. The law of goodwill gratitude by the arrival of Sesame Street in 1969 was accordingly lavished upon public television, would be perceived thereafter by viewers in the income levels and the safe haven for children. Sad, no. In September 21st, 1967, Lloyd Morissette met with another coordinator of television executives. This time he wasn't trying to sell everything. He required Sesame Street's first focus group, 5 experienced men with the business and programming sides of television, commercial and non-commercial, were briefed on the preschool project. They were asked to assess its viability and estimate its cost. Its attendance was George Hanneman, executive producer of children's program for NBC, Oscar Cars, a former vice president of programming for CBS, Mark Goodson at the Goodman Bill Topman, Mark Twain's Bill Topman production company, who did game shows like not Wheel of Fortune, but they did Price is Right back in the day, and Family Feud, other game shows like that. That's just me. Louis Friedman and Stuart Sargent of the Mascot PBL, and George Blizzard, director of community service at WCBS TV, Joe Lester, the Harold Ed School researcher was have advised exploring sound alongside Marcelet, Cooney, Freesburg, Hoffman, and freelance writer Lena Gosledge. Okay, in the calculated move, Marcelet also invited Lou Hoffman, who was still involved in his pilot plan to see production of the series. So, a Hollywood studio, Hoffman agreed to attend the meeting and by whatever his former CBS colleague Oscar Cars deemed it smartest course. He anticipated that Cars would see the things his way. That they probably verse from the TV polls was swift, clear, and and it was a show for preschoolers that taught and entertain or vice versa was the idea whose had time has come Louis Friedman, who attended the dinner party in 1966, took charge of the conversation. You cannot possibly do that without setting a big organization. Wow, this is awesome. But anyway, he said there's no production company in the United States that can do this, so you can have to create that animal. That sentiment echoed around the room, and the call arose for the creation of a new undermodernized hybrid organization that, in Maserati's words, was he be given the task of fusing education and entertainment. Okay. It was said right away that LA was not the right candidate for this kind of project. And I agree with that. That was a New York project. That was a New York project. Yeah, I agree. Where you can get the right kinds of people, Cooney recalled. You can almost hear Hoffman's balloon burst. Lloyd was so stirred. Cooney said one of the reasons he had that mean was to have Hoffman's in attendance. Wow. So easy to that. We respected the producers, and was everyone was in favor of creating a new entirely. That was the end of the showbiz pilot discussion. He was a turning point. Lou left knowing it was going to be his way, but he came around. But and to his credit, he never looked back. Hoffman, Cars, Guzman, Charlotte, and Desert called for an Grisman rollout for the series, with an astonishing number of episodes spread across a long enough time period to build a successful audience. Their initial suggestion was a daily 1-hour program to be over either a 26 or 39-week schedule. Yeah, that was cool enough. With perhaps many as 130 episodes in the debut season. Each episode would air twice daily. Presumably more in the afternoon to reach as many children as possible. And I agree with that. No one is sure what it would cost, but Sherman agreed to help Cooney craft more than his own budget on one to that would be cost much closer to Hoffman's $6 million projection that the burst stabbed at $2 million. As the meeting broke up, WCBS's Desires caught up with Cooney on her way out to share a thought that had occurred to him. During the discussion, he said, "You're going to teach numbers and letters, right?" Last page, and I'll wrap things up. Anyway, and the Hutch and the kids learn the catchy commercials, right? Then why not make commercials that teach letters and numbers? In one brilliant flash, the first brief street light of Sesame Street was eliminated. I have no idea the attention of commercials with young children in my Okay. Anyway, I've known the attraction of commercials for young children in my report. Excuse me. But I haven't put together myself and how much commercials they can be used, or if it could. Cooney said we're going to teach letters and numbers, and we wanted the commercials in some form. I don't know how much I missed the connection, but George brought it together. Desert, pleased with Cooney's response, had a flourish. I bet you could get a string of advertising industries to donate each commercial to get you started. How right it is. Cleveland tried to do a department to work on rewriting and expanding the factory study into the something that more we seem a plan to for season 1 in November. Margaret was a typewriter as well. Yeah. Season 1's gonna be big because even though I will talk about in chapter 14 in the next several episodes, but that's just me. And I'll talk about it in Sesame Street vlogs soon afterwards. That's just me. But I'll talk about it. But anyway, moving on. Okay. Drafting a sure member of his boss, Alan Pfeiffer, which he said that the $1 million commitment for Carney would be enough money to get the pit project organized and the funding the core staff over the period of expiring 2 years. Wow. It would not be nearly enough money to assure production and distribution of the program. This core support would all allow permanent of the key program professional would ride the project over until the Other Energies Act. Pfeiffer was inclined to agree. Wow. A grant with the magnitude would represent Carney's largest of the decade. And in the moment that caused long after Sesame Street was a reality, Pfeiffer said that he took why assuming at the thought that this enforcement effort and the supplemental funds involved might be frustrated by the determined little 4 and 5-year-old who met his mother's back and turn slip ups to the TV and switches into cartoons. And that was chapter 8. What do I think about this book? Chapter 8 book. It was awesome, but overall it was the greatest chapter in this book. And thankfully they're gonna come out with Sesame Street, and which I'll talk about in the next chapter of the book. But anyways, that was episode 9 of Sesame Street's Street Game book, Complete History of Sesame Street. I mean, that's not the complete history of Sesame Street by any means, but we'll see what happens. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one, which is going to be chapter 9 of this book, and that's going to be the last video I'm going to be doing today. Until next time, this is LukeJ62895's. Goodbye, peace out, baby. Get more videos, guys, very soon. Till then, Jefferson out. See ya.